Hey everyone, it's Carter, and welcome to this episode of Making It Up, the conversation series where I chit-chat with other writers and have a good time. And, sometimes I talk to writers with many books out there. Sometimes I talk to debut authors, which is what happened today. And I always love talking to debut writers because I remember being a debut author, and that's a really cool feeling. And I always like to hear people's stories about how that road to publication. So today, I talked to Ciera McElroy, and so her brand new novel, which just came out in February of 2023, is called Atomic Family. A fantastic novel, and it's gotten rave reviews. I actually got a starred review from Publishers Weekly, which is a big deal. And for that to happen with your first book is very impressive. So her story is pretty interesting, but she's somebody who is like, from a young age, I'm going to be a writer. And just, was writing, even portions of novels when she was 11. So it is in Ciera's blood to be a writer. And it's great to see how all those efforts and the degrees, she has an MFA, culminated with her debut novel being out in hardcover, which is great. And who knows how many more novels she has ahead of her in her future. I assume dozens upon dozens. Her career is just getting started. So it was great to understand kind of her path. And I think she had a lot of wisdom to impart about the agent finding process and decisions to make when you're putting your book out there on submission. So aspiring writers, listen to this one. This is a good one. Ciera's got a lot of good advice. This is my conversation with Ciera McElroy.
Hello. How are you, Carter?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm great.
Nice to meet you.
Good. Thank you. You too.
Where are you?
I am in St. Louis, which is where I'm currently based.
Currently based. It sounds like they're shipping you all over the world.
Feels like it. My husband is in residency for medical work,
Wow.
So we have moved quite a bit. But we have 2 more years here.
Oh wow! And then what?
And then he gets a job. Hopefully, after medical school and residency, better. So yeah, we were married through his medical school years, and I did my MFA at that time, and then we moved here to St. Louis for his residency.
You're a very learned family.
Yes.
So where did you? But you're not from that area.
No, I'm from Orlando, actually.
Oh, okay. You get back there much?
Not as much as I'd like.
Yeah.
But I miss it. The thing is with Florida, when you're there, at least when I was there, I was always so hot. I hated being there, and then now I miss it. So it's one of the places that's better in my memory, I think.
Yeah. I lived in Miami for about almost 2 years in my early 20s, and it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
Like, especially when you get to, I was married at the time, and it was like we were starting to think about having a kid. I'm like, I don't think this is the place. Miami was a little bit wild. So, and then, so you're growing up in Florida, and were you, I see your bookish sweatshirt. Were you a book nerd growing up?
I was, one of those Hermione kids. Like, I was carrying books to school and wanting to be a writer since I was very young. I started my first, quote unquote novel at 11.
Uh-huh.
I kid you not. I was like to my parents, I'm going to be an author, and I'm writing these books in my little, composition books. And I don't know. It was always part of my childhood.
Where do you think that comes from? Because it's, I've talked to a lot of people, and I'm always curious to know what that moment was, if there was a moment, because for me, it was literally a moment. It was a day where I'm just like, this is what I do now. Other people, it's a long, slow burn, but very few have told me, as a little kid, I knew I wanted to be an author.
Yeah, I don't know if I have one particular moment, but so many. I grew up in the age of the scholastic book fairs,
right.
Being given books from a very, very early age. I was also homeschooled, which I think was really crucial in my upbringing because books were just such a formative part of how we educated. And
Yeah.
I had the time to actually explore what I wanted to, which was recreating what I enjoyed. And
Right.
My early books, again, I say books in like major air quotes there, or exploring what I love to read. And at the time, it was a lot of historical fiction, like the American Girl doll book. So a lot of it just came from being inundated by literature as a very, very young child, and then having the space to explore and to play words, that I don't think children always have.
Right. So you're saying if you were just in the public school system, you would have had, X minutes out of the day for, English class, but there wasn't like a self-directed, like, well, I really want to lean into literature and reading, for most of the day. You make your own partitions.
I think I still would have wanted to write, but I think the way that our educational model was set up, it gave me the time to pursue it, that I don't think I would have necessarily had.
So then you go to, where did you go post high school?
I went to Wheaton College, a small liberal arts school outside Chicago. Studied English, big shock.
So you were all in.
I was all in, like completely all in. And I had been working on a YA novel at the time, and then, discovered there was literature outside of YA, because that's what I was reading in high school, and that's what I was writing. And everything changed from there. I did start my novel in college. I was 19, and it became what Atomic Family is now, which I think that's also kind of cool, is that it was just a natural growth out of what I was experiencing in real time.
So interesting. So, and then when you were writing, even as a little kid, were you doing anything with it? Like you'd write a story and you would just sit there, or were you like, hey, how does this get into print?
I was doing things with it. I had an early publication in a magazine. I don't even know if they're still around, called Teen Ink. And it was like this newspaper print for teenagers. And so I was publishing work there. I had a blog, which I feel like no one really read, but it was just what everyone had in the mid 2000s. And I was trying to get a literary agent by the time I was like 16. I was like going to conferences, and I think a lot of this was very naive and like overly hopeful. I felt, because I'm so young, that's a novelty. My career will take off because of my age. And I look back and I'm so thankful that I tried, but also thankful that I failed, because I wasn't ready, and like the work wasn't up to what it needed to be. But in my head at like 16, I was taking it very seriously. I was like,
I mean, when you think about it, you weren't naive. I mean, how many 16-year-olds even know what an agent is? I mean,
it's true. Yeah.
Most people have no clue of, like, when they write a book, like, now what happens? So exactly. You were, I mean, and that's kind of a crucial education, because, the writing is perhaps the tough part, but you still have to understand the publishing world, which is pretty opaque and kind of depressing, if you start to think, okay, I'm going to make a living being a writer. But I guess the earlier that you're in tune to those realities, probably the better, because it's a bit sobering, I can imagine.
It is. And I had some negative experiences. I had one editor tell me, this was like at the height of this type of literature, but he said, "Oh, you're such a good writer, but what we're really looking for is Amish fiction." And I was so shocked. I was like, "Excuse me?" And he's like, "It's like historical fiction," which is what I was writing at the time, but it's contemporary. And so there were just moments like that where I was very turned off, just because I felt like I was being told to do what everyone was already doing, and that is not what I wanted to hear.
Meanwhile, I haven't heard about a lot of like Amish movies being made or books being sold, but maybe that's a big trend. I don't know.
This was a thing like 2009. Like there was there was like one book or something that had come out and everyone was reading it and they were looking for like the next
Interesting.
It's not, it definitely is not a thing right now, I think, but like a while ago it was.
Right. But what you learned was, I'm assuming, is like, don't write to trends, because who can time it? Who could know?
Right.
What's the point of it?
They change so fast,
And why don't you just write what you enjoy, what rather than, because people do write to trends and like, okay, I'm gonna write this for as long as I can, but you still have to be a good writer and still tell a good story, even if the trend is in vogue at the time. So I think it's too much effort.
Oh, I agree. And the publishing process is just so slow. So what's trendy today may not be in 2 years, or 3, or however long.
So you got your English degree, and then did you immediately go into an MFA program, or you took some time?
I did immediately go in, which is unusual, as I learned, because I was the youngest in my program by a lot in most cases. And, I think I was so singly focused. And so I knew I needed an MFA for what I wanted to do. And it also gave me permission to write for 2 years and to my time, my focus, because I was able to get a a GTA position where I was paid.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. What was the thinking behind, like, I have to have an MFA?
At the time, it was because I knew I wanted to teach, but did not want a PhD.
Oh, got it.
So, if you have a book and an MFA, at least typically, that qualifies you to teach college level. And I wanted that option, even though I did not ultimately pursue academia for just millions of reasons. But I liked that I had that credential and that I could if I chose to in the future.
And credential aside, was the program what you had expected? Did it make you a better writer?
It did. It really did. On the craft level, my work changed immensely. I feel like the amount of focus that you have with a thesis advisor is just like nothing that you get in an undergrad program. Like the kind of check-in and line by line work, my sentences, my structure got so much better. I will say an MFA can be challenging just because of the people who show up in your workshop classes. Had some challenges with certain folks. There's the Twitter page, that guy in your MFA. It's a very real thing.
Oh.
Guys who show up and write sexist, terrible content, and you have to read it and critique it. And, that's reality. And I think I thought going in, the world of writing is progressive and is moving forward. But there are still a lot of people who, how do I want to word this nicely? Are writing content that feels like it's straight out of the 50s.
Yeah.
It's disappointing.
That is disappointing. And not only are you saying they're having to deal with their shit, but you're also like, you're there to also have critiques of your own work. And when you're like, oh, this guy, so you do have to learn like who to listen to and who not to listen to. But I would think with a thesis advisor, like if you don't, that's such a monumental task, going line by line with a thesis advisor. Like if you're not on the same wavelength, like that would be really difficult, I would think.
Yeah. And my thesis advisor was great. The faculty was all great. And I think that this happens probably every couple of years cohorts. It's not just at my program. It's just kind of an issue that happens where this particularly macho literary aesthetic continues to come up.
Huh. That's so, like, I don't know anything about the MFA world, but that is very surprising to me. For the reasons you said.
Yeah, I was
surprised. Writers being like kind of just empathetic and open-minded and progressive, to your point, but
no, there was this one guy in my class who, man, I hope he doesn't listen to this because he'll know it's him. But you know what? Whatever. He would like put his pen down when anytime a woman made a comment on his story in workshop, and he would like look at you with this face of I don't validate what you're saying. I'm not taking notes on what you're saying. And he would like very visibly pick it up anytime a man spoke. Just lots of little microaggressions like that.
You ever Google these people to see if they got anything published? Their manifesto?
Is that petty of me? I don't know. But I mean, it's a reality that women have to face either in the workforce or in educational environments still. So I think that was a big wake-up call for me because I went to, a little liberal arts school.
Right.
Nothing like that. And I had some difficult teaching experiences as well with some very similar challenges. And
where you were the teacher?
Yes. Yeah. So I taught in my MFA program. It wasn't worth it for me.
Interesting. Well, I mean, sexism aside, which I don't mean to put aside, but it's just like the idea that in any kind of writing program, you're already so raw and so vulnerable and it's so subjective that, even with the best of intentions, they're like, okay, I'm not going to listen to you. I do listen to you, whatever. It's a juggling act. Throw into that, toxicity on top of that. And I can see that being an untenable situation.
Yeah, it's tough. It is. It's difficult, but worth it in the end if you care about the craft,
But you ultimately didn't gravitate towards academia. So what was the thinking at that point?
A lot of reasons. Through my MFA, I started working in film, actually, which is pretty unusual, but I do, and I still work in film. I do marketing and communications for film campaigns. And I found that I was not interested in pursuing the adjunct route and just having no job security. That just was not appealing to me.
As opposed to being a novelist.
And well, exactly. But, even this is like, I'm not supporting my family with book expenses, right?
None of us are. Very few of us are.
Right. And so, I wanted to pursue what was more stable at the time and more fun. And I also found that after a day of difficult teaching, I had no creative energy left to write. But even though I am a full-time writer, in the sense I'm a copywriter, it's so emotionally separate from my creative work that I'm still able to do some novel
You can compartmentalize.
Exactly. But when I'm teaching fiction all day and reading student stories, it just brings out a different kind of exhaustion for me.
Yeah. That's fair. So your debut novel that you started, you said when you were 19, was that the focus of your thesis?
It actually was not, which is crazy. I did a collection of short stories for my thesis.
Oh, okay.
Which are published now. And I took a novel workshop just as part of my course load in the MFA and rewrote what I started in undergrad as a novel. We workshopped it. And basically I was told, concept is great, but the structure needs work. So I started over again from scratch after the workshop. And that is pretty close to the version that got published. So I signed with my agent right after graduating from the MFA, and we went on submission shortly thereafter.
How hard was it to find an agent? Because I know that's a pretty daunting thing to do.
It is. So I had a really fortunate workaround because I had a pretty simple time. So I'm sure you're familiar with AWP, these are writers and writing programs. They run a program through their conference called Writer to Agent, where you can submit a portion of your novel at a query to agents who are participating in that year's conference. And the benefit to that is it's one of the rare opportunities to query before a manuscript is complete. So I actually queried my novel at like 50 pages and was offered 2 different meetings with agents in person. This was during the AWP conference in Portland. I was still in my MFA program, obviously was thrilled beyond belief. Even just getting a face-to-face meeting is very rare in this literary world. And I got to see their vision for the book and hear how they thought it would fit with their client list. And I think it gave me the motivation I needed to also finish it. They were now waiting. So what happened was both of those agents I met with personally told me, when the book is done, reach back out and put in the subject line we've already met, and I will look for it. which is exactly what happened. So when I did query and I did a full query round, they reached back out within 24 hours of that
Wow.
contact. Yeah, and asked for the full manuscript. And then I got multiple offers and had to do the grueling process of deciding, which in my case was a little bit fun because the agencies were all sending me books. They would send me like gift boxes of books with their clients.
Wow.
Yeah, it was very fun. And I think that's just because I'd already met them in person.
Yeah.
So I really talk up that program.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's not normal.
It's not. But a lot of people don't know that programs like this exist when you go to conferences or conventions or workshops or whatever.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people do like pitch fests and stuff like that at conferences, and that's exhausting too. It's exhausting, obviously for the agent, but it's exhausting for the aspiring writer too. Just to be, you're distilling, your story to literally an elevator pitch that you've got 30 seconds to a minute for, and that's, But some people have found their agents that way. But it's the agent finding world is difficult for sure.
This is what I would call like a better, more intimate version of a pitch fest because I actually had like 20 minutes with them.
Yeah.
In like a private little conference room, and we just talked about the book. I mean, that's where I thrived, is like the one-on-one, and I had a chance to actually share more than a 30-second log.
Right. Well, in your story, you're fortunate also. Not only did you relatively easily find an agent, but you sold your debut novel, or you sold the first novel you'd ever written, which is less common than not, for sure. Like my first I had an agent with my first book, but my first 3 didn't sell, so I just like kept writing. But and kind of like how you went back and said you were glad your early stuff wasn't published, like same thing. I'm like, even though I got an agent with them, but I could, looking back, they weren't ready, and because once your stuff is out there, it's out there.
Yeah, it's permanent.
It's a little scary. So what was the process of selling that book?
Oh, it was so crazy because of COVID. So, I signed with my agent in 2019. We did our initial edits together to make sure we were happy. I kid you not, we went on submission like the first week of March of 2020. Like, of course, I had no idea what was coming for the whole world. And we made the very difficult decision to pull it from submission. We just felt like, especially with this kind of book, which is about the Cold War and does deal with some themes about like waiting for the world to end, because that's how it felt. It just didn't feel like the right time to have those conversations with editors who are largely still based in New York. I'm so glad we made that decision, but it did mean like an extra year of just waiting. Right. And that was very difficult.
But it's smart, and what I think maybe people don't understand is that, if somebody looks at if you go on submission, somebody looks at it and they're either the timing's not right because of the subject matter, or they're just like not even focused because they're trying to figure out their own stuff, and then they just do a pass on it. Mm-hmm. It's been passed. So it's, you can't just throw it back out there a year later because they'll have a note that like, oh, I read this, and for whatever reason we passed. Why are you sending this to me again? So it sounds like you guys are being very thoughtful about how you want to have it received and give it the best opportunity for that.
And just wait for the right timing is everything for any book.
So were you writing anything else in that year?
During 2020, I was pregnant with my first. So a lot of it was just being pregnant and letting myself focus on surviving the pandemic. And then as soon as we sold the book, which was in 2021, I started working on another project, which has just been completed and is turned into my agent. So should be on submission here pretty soon.
Nice.
So it sold in 2021 and then just came out last month.
So, let's not overlook the fact that you were pregnant during 2020, which is like a mentally, I can only imagine a very mentally taxing and worrisome and joyful thing, but that's, that must have been pretty odd.
It was so weird. And we went to go live with my in-laws during that time, and I'm so thankful that we did. We weren't living by ourselves, but just a lot of weird things happened. I didn't expect to live with my in-laws when I had my baby having like so
During a pandemic.
exactly. So yeah, it was just a survival year, as I think it was for many people. I mean, I was working on some things here and there, but I knew the book was in its pipeline, and I just had to wait and then focus on taking care of myself and our son.
And so at some point in 2021, your agent's like, "Okay, I think now we go out." And so your agent went out to however many publishers and how quickly were you getting responses?
It took probably a couple weeks. I know. I have to. Why?
A couple of hours passed, and I was surprised we hadn't heard anything.
No, but that's how I feel. Like,
I know.
I'm sure others do too.
If it's months, you're...
Yeah.
Couple weeks is pretty fast.
I don't even remember. Like, I think I had to like put it out of my brain a little bit. It took some time. And we would get some feedback, and we would be in like holding patterns. We'd hear, "Oh, we're going to go talk to editorial," and then, "Oh, we passed." And like that whole process of hope, and then the answer is still no.
Right.
And then we ultimately sold it to Blair. And they have been so good to work with. So it came out in hardback, ebook, and they bought audiobook rights.
That's great.
All three came out on February 28th of this year.
So when you received your author copies and you saw the finished version for the first time, you opened that box. What was that like?
Almost a little stressful, which is not what I expected, but just because it's permanent in public. Like, I thought it would just be this moment of like pure joy, and it was. I mean, I was so excited. But at the same time, I was like, I can't read this. I can't flip through it. What if I find a typo or something? I don't know.
Somebody will find a typo and make you quite aware of it.
I'm sure, or a historical scientific error or whatever. So I had to like center myself and be like, the book is as good as it can be. So many people have reviewed it, and I'm proud of it, but I'll probably never read it all the way.
I mean, why would you? Like, it's the only time I ever look back at my books is if I'm asked to do a reading, and so then I'll flip through it, and what I inevitably do is like, because they'll say like 5 minutes, so I'll take a 10-minute passage and I'll edit it down, and then I'm like, why didn't I just write it like this? This is so much better. This is so much better. So, but that's the only time I ever go back and look at my books.
Yeah. Do you have like reading chapters, like the sections you read from your books?
Yeah. I mean, I usually try to find something that's like, has enough going on. Hopefully it has a few nice things in it, but it's also like, just short to the point. Because I'm a huge believer in short readings. And I speak on readings, and I'm like, yeah, if you're not good at it, don't do it at all. Because most people don't want to hear readings. But if you are going to do it, rehearse it. And like you said, find that one chapter that really seems to work, and then just really keep practicing it. So it came out, what you said, last month, right?
Yeah, February 28th.
So it's just still a little baby.
I know. It's just barely out in the world.
Are you doing events?
I am. I've done some all over. I did one already in St. Louis. I was at Orlando, where I'm from, and St. Pete, Florida. I was out in Seattle for AWP this year. I was just up in Wheaton, Illinois, and then I'm headed to Nashville next week.
Oh, right on. To Parnassus, or?
No, I'm going to Novelette.
Okay.
They're an adorable little downtown bookstore, doing an author conversation. Yeah.
So that's right. So these are all the things now that you probably didn't learn. Getting an MFA is the self-promotion, which is abhorrent to most authors and difficult, but necessary. Yeah. And you're probably sick of your book by now, but now's the time you really got to be talking about it. Mm-hmm. How have you been adjusting to all that?
It's a lot of work for what seems in the moment like very little payoff when you see how many copies are sold at events. but I know how important it is. And it's also fun. If I let myself remember to have fun, like I get to talk about my book. This is truly what I dreamed of since childhood. And now it's just a matter of actually doing it.
Right.
And being on the road and going to the bookstores, doing the signings, signing the back stock in the stores, all those types of things. So I have really enjoyed it.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all that stuff there isn't a direct correlation, right? There's not an ROI that you're going to be able to measure on, like, I did these Facebook ads or I did X, Y, and Z. I can't see how that's moving the needle, but I think there's a lot of intangibles about it that's hugely important. And a lot of it's just building your name, however directly or indirectly that is. Every time you show up somewhere, every time a bookstore employee makes a connection with you, I remember that person and they had a great event. All that stuff is additive over the years. And, I've been doing this for 20 years and like you start to see the payoff, like, oh, people start to know me now, even though, I didn't do a whole lot for that book or whatever. So but it's a slow process.
It is. And I'm glad you said that because, I am someone who hopes to write many more books. I am in my 20s. Like, I know my career is ahead of me, is not necessarily like now, even though it is partly now, of course. But I see this as largely like setting the groundwork for the career I hope to have in my 40s, 50s, and beyond, because most writers don't peak until then, right? And so
that's we say this a lot on the show, is like, that's one of the beautiful things about being a writer is like the best can always be yet to come, and you don't know when that might be. I started writing in my early 30s, and there's so many ups and downs along the way, and that's the same story for everybody. It's like,
everyone,
you'll have great sales, and then you'll have periods of just crickets, and then something unexpected happens, and who knows? Like but if you keep at it, if you're just like, I just write every day, that's what I do, and don't think so much about the career part of it, I find then kind of shit just falls into place one way or another.
Yeah.
But it takes that tenacity to just keep writing, which I think it's a struggle for most people.
I think it is. And that was one thing that was very important to me and my agents, that once we had like kind of locked in Atomic Family, it was like moving on is that work on something else. You just have to be able to go on to another project because we didn't know if it would sell, right? Like we started to assume maybe it won't. And you have to mentally be prepared to let things go, but also to keep going. Even so.
Totally. And, in the case of what happened to me with some of my earlier books is I was kind of going from publisher to publisher, and the publisher would say, okay, we love your next book, but the one we just published didn't sell enough, so we're going to pass. I'm like, oh, damn it. Now I got to find another publisher. Mm-hmm. It's a very fickle industry, especially when you're just starting out and don't have much of a track record. People will drop you quickly if they think, you're not an author worth investing. I mean, it depends on the publisher. Obviously, different publishers have different reputations, but it's a lot of competition because there's a lot of writers out there submitting a lot of content, including probably that disgusting guy from the MFA program. Who knows what he's writing?
He's probably going to get a really big advance.
Oh, yeah. Don't say that.
Oh, that happens.
I know. I know it does. So you just said you have this second book, that is with your agent right now. So you're also in that weird time where you're like, oh God, I got to get that email back from the agent. Like, what do you think? Cause I don't know if your agent had seen parts of this book before or not.
We have.
Okay. So it shouldn't be huge surprises one way or the other.
Yeah, this was our revision, so I'm expecting
okay.
Ready to go on sub, or we need another pass on chapter 1. It's gonna be, we're at that stage.
Right. And then you'll submit, I assume, to your current publisher. They have the right of first refusal for it. So fingers crossed that goes well.
Yeah, thank you. We'll see. Hands out, but we're going to be starting it again, which is...
I know. But it feels good, right? I mean, you're a published author now, and not very few people, like as many authors as we know, and feels like the world is only made up of authors. Very few people actually get their stuff published, traditionally published. It's very rare. So
it is very humbling. Like, I mean, I know so many writers. I'm sure you do too. But when I'm at these bookstore events, I have people come up to me and say, "Wow, I can't believe I'm meeting a real author." I have to like remember what that means, right? For people who look at this and this is what they want to do, the same way I did when I was in high school going to book events like this. So you're exactly right. And it does kind of help put it in perspective, because I see it as oversaturated, and I know all of my friends who are trying to get their books published, and I see the process so intimately, like I'm so entrenched in it.
Right.
But not everyone is, right?
Yeah, the shine of the chrome comes off a little bit once you're kind of in the weeds of it, but it's also kind of fascinating to see all the machinations of the industry, and how they're trying to position a title, and how they even name a title relative to what's out in the market. As a business, it's pretty interesting, but it's it's nothing that anyone should ever look at and say, "I'm going to do that to make money." I just think that's a foul. You certainly can make money, but if that's a terrible reason to go into it. You go into it because you have a passion for storytelling, and you want to continuously get better at it. And if you have that, I think then things will fall into place. Yeah, if the universe is paying attention.
Yeah, I tell people that if you can't imagine not writing, then this is the kind of life for you. Like, you would do it anyway.
Right.
And that's how I am. Like, I would write it for myself no matter what.
Right.
And that helps the joy be there, I think, because it's very easy to get cynical in this field, forget why we loved it to begin with. And that's something I try to come back to, is like, does it make you happy? Like, do you enjoy doing it? Is it a process that is comforting to you? Like, whatever that is that motivates you to keep writing, whether it's therapeutic, like that still needs to be the core of why you do it.
Yeah. And I think there exists a chasm between that desire and that passion and that joy, and then the reality of doing it every day when it's not fun to do every day. Like, there's a lot of days where it's miserable or it feels like work. And I think that's also what stops a lot of people, is they experience those few days of joy and they're like, this is great. And they don't realize you really need to be doing this 7 days a week if you want to get anything done. And they have a few days where it's not so interesting. But I think that just means that's, it's not their calling. I mean, I think
it may be a hobby, Yeah.
Yeah. Because there's something about also, I always think about this. It's so much work, and you have to be so present in the moment to write, and you have to be so challenging of yourself and not letting yourself be lazy, which is a really hard thing to do. I think you only really strive to get better and to do it if it's really in your bones. Because I think of like other things, other artistic ventures that I would never do, because I don't think it's in my bones to write music, for example. I could probably learn it, but it's just not something I would stick with. So I don't know. I think you can become a writer and learn to become a writer, but I think you almost have to be a writer before. It is, whatever that means, I think it has to exist in you somehow. I don't know.
If you brought up the laziness, I mean, work ethic is huge and is one of the biggest things that was emphasized for me by my faculty advisors. And I had one professor, this was my thesis advisor, who said, if you have time for things like Netflix, which the implication was we all did, in grad school, we always made the time. He's like, then you have time to work on your novel.
Yeah. Oh,
like,
yep.
Just even little things like that. He's like, you can say, oh, I need to relax and chill, but like, do you?
Yeah.
And that's hard, but it's true.
Yeah. It's, and I've written about this as well. And I think it comes down to what's a passion for you, because you will prioritize your passions. And if watching Netflix is a passion, you're going to find time for it. And, if you're a writer, even if it's 15 minutes, if you're doing it every day, you're going to build that muscle and you're going to get better and you're going to be curious about becoming better. And, and then it'll just kind of take off from there. But, if it's not a passion, then it's very easy to say, I don't have time.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why a lot of people will say, I have a book in me. You've ever heard that? Like, I could. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I could if I wanted to. And I'm like, well, that's the difference.
Right. Or they're like, I'll never write this story. I have a great story. I'm going to tell it to you so you can write it. I'm like, I don't want to write your story because either it's going to be a terrible story or it's going to be a great story and I write it and you're going to sue me. Say, I gave the guy the idea. So
yeah, it doesn't go well either way.
Yeah. Well, we're going to wrap up. Before we do, we're going to do a quick little storytelling.
Okay.
Got your debut author energy. So I'm going to I usually have books picked out, but I'm just going to, I don't. So I'm going to ask you to pick a color of a book and then I will go grab that colored book from my bookshelf.
All right, let's do blue.
Sounds good. So I picked Blue Spine, Cormac McCarthy's latest book, The Passenger, which I have to say, and I wrote about this as well, this was did not finish for me. And I love Cormac McCarthy. Road is probably my favorite book of all time. This one, maybe I should give it more than, I think I gave it around 100 pages. It just felt so self-indulgent and confusing. So, sorry, Cormac. But so give me a page between 1 and 400.
257.
Okay, and I'm just going to quickly scan to see if there's something that jumps out. So I'm going to read a sentence, and then you give me a couple, and then this can go anywhere we want. It doesn't.
I'm gonna finish the story.
You're just going to. I'm going to read a sentence, and then you just give me one or two of what the next sentences might be, and then I'll do a couple sentences, and after like 2 minutes, we'll call it a day. How about? I guess this is going to be very basic. He pulled up the other chair and sat.
His wife sat beside him. The marriage counselor sat opposite on the sofa with her notebook in hand.
He tried to think about all the places he'd much rather be and decided it was pretty much any one of them. He could feel the energy coming off of his wife, and it was dark and it was heavy. 1 minute had passed in total silence between all of them. He didn't know if he was going to make it the full 50 minutes.
His wife had asked to go to counseling for years, and he had always said, "We're not the kind of people who need counseling. We're the kind of people who tough it out." He has a feeling this is precisely why they're here today.
But it got to the point much more quickly when the therapist simply lobbed out the first question to him. "Why don't you tell me why you think you're here?"
"Well," he said, "my wife thinks I spend too much time with the dog and not enough time with her, for starters." To this, his wife laughed and said, "Of course you'd say that."
The therapist turned to her and said, "Now why don't you tell me why you think you're here?"
"Because," the wife said, and she looked at her husband with such pity, with such surprise, that he was in turn shocked, thinking, maybe I don't really know why we're here to begin with.
"We're here because our marriage is soulless," she said. And it was the first time he had ever heard her use that word. What the hell did soulless actually mean?
"She is an artist," his wife. "And years ago, she used to describe her art as soulful. She would paint beautiful pictures of the Midwest sunsets as it curved over the plains. And now, does she feel deplete because of him, because of them?"
Oh, I think we call it there. That was a beautiful sentence.
Yay! It turned into a family drama, which is what I write.
Yeah, in my mind, there was like a knife under the couch, I think.
I was just about ready to be like, this is it.
Yeah, well, no, it was a nice little Kramer versus Kramer storytelling.
Oh, there you go. That was fun.
Well, listen, congratulations on the debut novel. I know that's that, as you will have many, 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 many more novels in your future, that feeling will never go away. You'll be excited with every book that you publish, but it's so exciting to see your new book out in the world, and now you're finally out hawking your wares.
Yes, thank you. It's been so fun. I'm just absolutely thrilled.
That's awesome. Well, I hope to talk to you when the next one comes out.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for your time, Carter.
Take care, Ciera. Bye. So that's it. That's my conversation with Ciera McElroy. She was great. I really enjoyed talking to her. I enjoyed our storytelling, family counseling. That can get a little heavy, but it didn't take too dark of a turn. We didn't give it enough time for that. But I encourage you to check out her brand new book, Atomic Family. And if you want to find out more about her, just go to CieraMcElroy.com. And if you want to find out more about me, just go to CarterWilson.com. So that is it. I so appreciate all of you watching and or listening. I told you this was going to be a good one. Ciera was fantastic. More episodes of Making It Up coming out soon. In the meantime, take care.